Okay, Mr. Carson, want to welcome you. Thank you for coming. I just want to make sure that we have this set so you can I can have it recorded for you and your campaign separate from uh, Representative Bruce. So we know. Okay, Mr. Carson, hold on. Welcome you. Thank you for coming. Had my live stream competing. So I just wanted to make sure that we took care of that. So Mr. Carson, I know you're running for the state Senate. So I want to allow you the opportunity at this point to introduce yourself. Tell us why you're running. And I know that we have people who are watching. And if anybody has any questions, they can just put that in the chat or raise their hand and I present that question to you. So, Mr. Carson.
Thank you, Willie, for having me on tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. For those of you who are watching, I'm Michael Carson. I'm a husband to Deborah Carson. We've been married now for 30 years. We have 2 adult sons. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a business, Image Builders, LLC, here in Georgia. I'm also a paralegal. I have been for over 35 years. I started my legal career in the Air Force. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran. I'm also a community advocate that have served a number of communities now for over 35 years, ensuring that the quality of life for individuals are better, particularly those that are underrepresented and those that are underserved. I'm running specifically because there's a void in our district. We need a visible and viable leader who will work collaboratively, not only as with other senators in the legislature, but with our commissioners, our mayors, our council persons throughout the year to make sure that we improve the quality of life for our constituents. I understand what it means to advocate for quality healthcare, which is part of our platform. COVID has exposed our deficiencies in our healthcare system here in Georgia. I fully support Medicaid extension such that everyone will have the opportunity to have coverage and no one will be left behind. Medicaid right now is just a political football, nothing more. There's no reason why we can't extend it to everyone in the state. I'm running because I believe in criminal justice reform. I've been a criminal justice reform advocate for a number of years. Currently, I serve with Fulton County DA's Conviction Integrity Unit as a sworn board member. I've also done some work in Cobb County with the Cobb Progressives on bail reform and helping the Cobb Police revamp their training manuals to include things such as implicit bias and dealing with individuals who have mental health crisis as well. I'm running because our democracy is at stake. I mean, we need someone who's going to champion and protect our voting rights here in Georgia. So those are just some of the reasons why I'm running. But again, more importantly, we need someone who's on the ground, who's visible, who's meeting with constituents, who's listening to what people have to say to make sure that their needs are being met when we go to the state capitol.
Okay, I do have a question and I want to sort of, I guess, lay some groundwork for this because I'm very familiar with our General Assembly and the setup. And I think as you know, and I know Representative Bruce is still on there, is that I do want to just say for those who are watching and participating that I guess the question really is, what is the difference between a state senator and a state representative? Most people may not know that Georgia has 180 members that are members of the state House of Representatives and 56 members that are of the state Senate. So they just want to know, I know what the difference is.
The state Senate, the job description for the most part, the simple way to put it is someone who writes and amends laws and who balances the budget. That's really the gist of what a state senator's responsibility is. However, the way I see it also is, in order for us to do that, in order for me to do that, you have to have someone who's meeting with the constituents to know what those bills should be, so that when you go to the State House, you're not just going, not just tackling the bills that might have come up in the last session, but that you have something that you can bring tangible to the table that the citizens are concerned about.
Okay, I do want to ask this as a part of a follow-up, just to help those who are watching get a better understanding. We do know, as I've mentioned, there's 56 members of the state Senate, and a lot of the House districts that we have, some of those may have, I mean, you may have a state Senate district that may be composed of one or more House of Representatives. And I do know, which I, historically, and I always considered to be important, that relationships are good, that it's important that you have a state senator and a state representative who are not only visible, but that he and she can work with other people that they share constituents, because that is a big part of it, that when somebody asks the difference, that, you may be in the state Senate and you're working on something, and it may be that same bill or a similar bill where you have that member of the House that's working on it. So can you sort of give an idea about, and I've known you for a couple of years, let's talk about the interaction, that the relationships, because I think that's important in this political climate. And I think something Representative Bruce mentioned earlier is having those relationships, and it's no longer just having good relationships to members of your parties, but also members of the other parties. So can you just talk a little bit about that to give people an idea of who Michael Carson is as it comes to working with others to get the job done?
Well, I'm State Rep Bruce is my state representative, so I know him personally. We're practically neighbors. We could probably throw a rock at each other's house if we threw it hard enough. Also, I've met with and I'm meeting with individuals from the Republican Party who are part of the community, particularly in Cobb County, to find out what their concerns are, what their needs are, so that I can better represent them as well. Should I be elected the state senator? I think it's important for us to not only dig deep into what our, get into tribal politics and just set our foot in the ground. I was like, I'm not going to move. There are some things I will say that I won't move on and I won't budge on. But there are also some things that I think that that can be done. I mean, for instance, the new bill that was just passed for mental health. I don't think it goes far enough, but people were able to work across the aisle. And I think where we find common ground is where you got to have communication to see what those things are. I don't think I can go to the state house and say, I'm not going to work with a Republican on anything, because I think that's foolish. And I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it's practical, because I think also there might be some things that are working in a Republican district that we could possibly use in District 38. But if I'm never going to talk to anyone because they're a Republican, then I think that's a disservice to me as a senator, and I think it's a disservice to the district.
Okay. And I want to ask a question. I'm trying to sort of tiptoe around it, but I like,
Okay.
I mean, you know me, and sometimes I try to be tactful with it, but
Yeah.
I live in State Senate District 38.
Yep.
And I think it's something that you mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And I know that you ran before.
Yep.
And I know who the state senator is.
Yep.
And you know me, I'm out in the community.
Yep.
And I'm not going to get into name calling, but I'm just going to say it like, I can't recall the last time I saw or heard from my state senator. And I think I have relationships to all of my elected. I mean, I know you as a candidate. I know Representative Bruce. I know my city council. I know my congressperson. And when you say, I guess that just have to be addressed. And I'm not trying to be mean about it. I'm just trying to. And I've had conversations with members of the General Assembly who sort of not far from my thinking, but as a concerned person who's out there, I honestly cannot tell you the last time that I had any interaction with my state senator. And I say that to say this: what are you going to do differently to make sure that we know what you're doing and who you are?
Well, and again, this goes back to what I said originally. The 40 days in session, and I'm on record with the AJC with this statement. The 40 days legislatively are important, but the other 325 days are just as equally important. So if I'm not meeting with constituents at least quarterly, if I'm not putting out newsletters, if I'm not having Zoom meetings or in-person meetings, if I'm not meeting with the commissioners and the mayors and the council persons in the district, then I'm not doing my job. It's not about the 40 sessions and I go home and then I come back and we go to the Wild Hog, everybody gets together, get ready for the next session, and then we have 40 days and then we go home, wash, rinse, repeat. It's about being in the community. I want to, and I will be a community senator such that you will see me, you will know who I am. I mean, we've been out canvassing and I've come across this at least with everybody that I've talked to, and this is not an exaggeration. They either one, don't know who their state senator is, or two, say that you're the first person that I've seen in 20, 30, 40 years that I've lived in the community that has come to my neighborhood, that have even just dropped literature on my mailbox and just to say hello to me. That should not be. The State House, every elected official, every seat that an elected official holds is the people's seat. And so my perspective is I'm there to represent the people. I'm not there just solely to represent lobbyists and special interest groups. There are plenty of those around the state capitol, but we got to get the people back to the capitol. I was just there a few times over the last couple of weeks, and you don't see the people at the state capitol. You see some of our elected officials, and you see a lot of lobbyists and a lot of people, a lot of special interest, but you don't see the people from the community. There are not enough of us from the community that are at the state capitol on a regular basis, or our young people that are at the state capitol. So what will make me different is that I want to engage the people so that the people will know what's going on. There are a lot of, there's a lot of, and Representative Bruce, he may still be on the line. I've said this to him personally, so I'm not saying anything out of turn. There are a lot of bills that were became law, specifically SB 202. And there was a lot of hoopla about SB 202 about the voting rights bill. It became law. So then my next question is, what are we doing as a party? What are our elected officials doing collectively to educate the constituents? How are we now prepared so that our seniors know how to submit their absentee ballots? What is communication around that? How are we working such that, yes, it's the law, but we can still get the people out to vote. We can still educate them and inform them. And I think that's our responsibility as not only community advocates, but elected officials, to make sure that the constituents are informed and educated such that they can exercise their right and their civic duty, not only to vote, but to be engaged.
Okay, and let me ask you, and I'm throwing this out, is that I have always, because I've had experience working with the General Assembly in the past, and I have always thought that our system is not designed to effectively serve people. And let me just say why is that, constitutionally, we have 40 days. And that 40 days probably start about first, second week of January. Then you got 40 days, and it goes this long because you stop certain days or anything like that. And if you in the metro area, I think it gives you a benefit, because when a bill is introduced that you don't have the time to sit down and have these meetings to get input from your constituents. I mean, in Atlanta, that's easy to do, but I do know, like you mentioned, the first couple of weeks, you're sitting there, you break, and then you got a bunch of luncheons and receptions that are sponsored by these same people, lobbyists, but you don't have the mechanism to say, hey, we're talking about this bill on mental health. We're talking about voting reform, that we don't have enough time to set up community meetings that will get people to organize and get out there to react. What do you think about that?
But see, this is where I think it's important that for instance, the election is next month, May 24th, and whoever's watching, if you're in District 38, I would appreciate your vote and your support. So once the election is over, or once the session is over, then that's where you put the infrastructure in place, such as you're easily able to tap into the MPUs, you're easily able to tap into the HOAs, you're easily able to tap into the community advocates, because you already have those people or those things on speed dial, I'll say, such that when things do happen, you can easily activate. I mean, we're in an age of technology. We can, you're talking to me from wherever you're at, and I'm at home. We have technology that we can use such that people can be informed, such that we can have community ambassadors who's working with me to make sure people get the information that they need. But I think once you put that infrastructure in place, then it's easy to come out and say, well, boom, this is something that Senator Carson's going to be live at 12 o'clock. He's going to be giving you an update on this that was introduced. Let's get it out. Whoever's working with me from the community, whoever community partners, whoever are working with me as a legislative aide, let's get this information out. And again, if you have the infrastructure in place, it's not hard to do, but you got to have the infrastructure in place and use the technology that's available. So I think it's doable, but I think there has to be relationships that have been built. And again, people know who you are to know that, okay, if this is Senator Carson, oh yeah, this is my senator because I live in his district, not who is Senator Carson. Oh, that's Senator Carson, I live in his district. So I think if you, and it's not gonna, everybody's not gonna be, everyone's not going to be tuned in. Everyone's not going to be tapped in for various reasons, but there has to be there has to be an effort made, I should say, to get it done. And I personally just don't think that we do a good job at it, not even as individual state legislators, but as a party. I don't think we do a good enough job to tap into it, because I think for various reasons, it just don't happen. The Democratic Party messaging from the federal level on down is not the greatest. They don't communicate with people the best way. So I think from a state perspective, from a district perspective, if we put things in place, if we put mechanisms in place, form those relationships and use technology, we can get it done.
Okay, here we're going to have a little visualization here. It's I mean, go with me on this. Sure. It's the Monday of Thanksgiving. The election is over. Michael Carson is the state senator-elect for District 38. Mm-hmm. Now, you have 3 bills that you want to pre-file and make sure it's ready day 1 in January. What are those 3 bills, the issues, and why?
Well, and you know what I've been asking, and I'll answer your question this way, and I'm not trying to skirt around your question.
Well, if you try to skirt around, I'm gonna jump on you now.
I know you are. So I filled out a lot of questionnaires, and where people want to know what the platform is. I've given them the platform, and they'll say, well, what are the 2 or 3 most urgent things your district needs? And I'll say, well, it really depends. In the city of South Fulton, it's different from what it is in Collier Heights, Adamsville, Old Bankhead. Is different from South Cobb and Smyrna and the portion of Mableton and Vinings that I have. But one of the most glaring things that I hear and throughout the district is affordable housing. That's one of the biggest challenges is affordable housing. And article just came out in Bloomberg that says basically Atlanta is not affordable, which we didn't really need an article to tell us that. For most people to have, a place to live. But I think a bill such as what is SB 491, whereby there was, an option for people to have a down payment, a system for people to have down payment. I think that's a good pathway forward for affordable housing. But I think a bill that we can introduce relative to affordable housing, or something that we could do to expand on what's already been introduced in this last session, I think it's important. But it's again, from May 25th on up to your November, your day before Thanksgiving. That's when I'm in the community. That's when I'm talking, finding out what the legislative priorities are. That's when I'm hearing from the people to find out what it is you need, what is it that we can put together, who are the experts, who do I need to talk to work with so that we can craft the bills that are needed, because this particular issue is the thing that's the loudest. This is the thing that people are really saying, that I'm hearing across the district. So these are the individuals with the expertise. These are the individuals that I'll sit down with and craft a bill and help me craft a bill. I was just speaking with a woman Saturday. We were outside of her home, and I was talking about criminal justice reform, and I was talking about how how Georgia leads the nation around probation, and how I'm passionate about cash bail reform throughout the state. And then she talked about, what about probation? And we talked about probation. She talked about, what about pre-probation? And I'm like, okay, that wasn't something I would consider. But she's like, well, that's something that I'm passionate about, that I have some expertise in. So I would, and I said to her, well, you'll be the person who I would tap into, to you along with others, to help me craft the legislation that we need. Because I would never sit on your show or any other show and say, well, I have all the answers to everything. And I think any elected official or candidate would be lying. We have some ideas of the things that we want to get done, but it's important for us to reach out to some of the subject matter experts on some of the things that I just don't have the knowledge of. But it takes me working with people in the community from May 25th to your November day before Thanksgiving or week before Thanksgiving question. So I think affordable housing would be one. I think to Governor Deal, I think he was more receptive. The former governor was more receptive to criminal justice reform than this current governor. I think we need to look at criminal justice reform. And I'll go back to cash bail reform and look how we can dig deeper into this probation system that we have, because a number of constituents, particularly in the Atlanta area, are on probation and are in the system or have papers on them such that they can't vote and can't access other things. I think those would be two of the things that would be some urgency based on the people in the district.
I'd have a question from someone, and that basically it is somebody who works in the school system. Mm-hmm. And they absolutely love educating their students on the importance of voters' education. Mm-hmm. And they probably want to know what is how do you get families to get involved and actually turn out to vote? And let me just share this, that sure. When I graduated from college, the first job that I had was with the Voters Education Project. So I don't know if you're familiar with there was a program that John Lewis had worked with, and one of my role was to go out and educate and register people to vote. When I left there, I ended up going to the Southern Regional Council, which was another organization. It was one of my things was being concerned about the electoral process in 11 southern states. And part of that is that I've recognized that the more educated people became, the more the number of Black elected officials became. To at some point that Georgia had the largest legislative Black caucus. But I'm just, almost 40 years later, that we're still trying to say we need to educate people to vote, where almost 60 years ago, people had water and dogs. So I understand this educator's question, but what can we, and that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this, that I said that, you see campaign signs and you see names, but trying to find the means to somebody like you can say, this is why I'm running. So to answer that person, what do you think we can do to get people more involved and pay attention to the electoral process?
So were they talking about from a young person's perspective or from
Well,
an
I mean,
old?
they're in school, but I think that has to start. But you know as well as I know that it's not just, those who may be 18, 19, and 20, that we have people 40
Right.
and 50 who say, well, I don't see a reason why I should vote, or they may not turn out to vote. And we saw what happened with that a few years ago when people assume certain things and then go out to vote. But I think her question is, how do you get families more educated about the government process? And not only that, it's something that Representative Bruce dealt with earlier, is that a state representative and state senator does not deal with zoning issues or
Right.
business development. But a lot of people that if this doesn't happen, then they're going to say, Senator Carson, you ain't brought in the business, or, so part
Yeah.
of that is just understanding how government works. So give me your thoughts on that.
I work for YMCA of the USA. YMCA is National Resource Office. I'm telework. I'm here in Atlanta. I telework from Chicago. I worked for them a number of years, and they asked me to come back in 2019. There's a program that they have called Youth in Government. So depending on where you are in the country, it could be Youth in Government, IN, or Youth and Government. And the whole point of it is to engage young people in the legislative process. But oftentimes, if I look at the youth and government programs throughout the country, not many of them look like us. Not many of us are involved in it. And it's just getting kids, it's taking them to the State House, it's introducing them to state legislators, they're learning how to write bills, they're understanding the process, they're understanding the three branches of government, so forth and so on. And those are the people that are becoming the interns, the clerks, and so forth. And they ultimately become the state senators and governors, mayors, and the like. And I say that to say that that's something that I want to expand. I want to work with the YMCA to expand here in Metro Atlanta, because I don't think we're engaged like we should be with respect to youth and government. Oftentimes, I am of the opinion that sometimes when the kids are learning, if the parents are interested in what the kids are doing, then the parents can get involved as well. So that's one avenue that to the person that asked the question. The other is just to educate. I think, again, maybe this is just pie in the sky thinking, but I think it's important, and I believe it's important as a state legislator to educate the people in your community. That's why I think when we talk about partnerships, when I talk about collaboratively working with mayors and council persons and commissioners, it's not just so that we can get things done, but it's so that people know who they need to contact to get what they need done. I was in a church on last Sunday speaking, and someone came to me and said, well, we need to get a speed bump for the seniors in this community. And I'm saying, well, that's you have to talk to your
that's your city council person.
Right, to your council person. And she's like, well, can you talk to him and can you make him get? And I'm like, well, I'm just a candidate. I'm not the state, but if I have those relationships, then I'll be able to get on the phone and say, hey, so-and-so in the community is concerned about this. Is there something we can do? Can we get something done? Can you get somebody from your office to address this with her? Either me or whoever's working with me, can you get that done so that we can, or can you address her question if it can't get done, or his question? But I don't think that's it's enough of that. And I'm just gonna say this. I am not one to bite my tongue, and I'm just not gonna be this, oh, well, this is my state senator lane, and that's your lane. This is the district. We're all in a district. If you're an Atlanta council person, if you're a City of South Fulton council person, if you're a Cobb commissioner, who I'll be meeting with tomorrow, we're all in this together. So don't look for me to come, shake your hand, stand for pictures, be there to give a resolution to somebody such and such day, and the people in the community are not receiving what they need to, for their quality of life to be improved. And I said this to a group that interviewed me, who oh, I was seeking an endorsement from, and they said, well, you know, the current senator is good for our group. And I said, well, how is she good for your group if the constituents in the community don't even know who she is and their quality, and the people that are part of your group she doesn't represent them. So how are they good for your group? That doesn't make sense to me. So if she's good for your group, she has to be good for the constituents that are part of your group that are in the district.
Well, I mean, you can be good, but I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to put a proper perspective on it. That, I mean, like I say, I've been in where I've run and I've sat down for endorsements, but I also understand that these are the same people that you mentioned earlier about who are lobbyists. And if I'm lobbying you and you're doing something, then you are good for my group. But it's not the same thing for that person in the street. So, I mean, I understand why they are saying that. Doesn't mean that it's right, because our elected officials should not just be good for lobbying groups, but they should be good for the people who actually, and I would say of that group, the majority of them do not live in State Senate District 38, because I'm not lost to the process. I've sat in those meetings. I've been in the General Assembly. So yeah, if I'm a lobbying group, then you are good for me. And if that's my perspective, who I'm going to address and answer, then that's totally different, because they're the one that's going to give me.
Then I shouldn't be in the state senate. Then I should never.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just going to their comment. Their comment to you says a lot, that she's good for us. But what Michael Carson is saying, I want to be good for the people that live in State Senate 38. And okay, so at that point, I'm gonna give you about a minute to say, why should we vote for Michael Carson for the State Senate?
Some years ago, a 7-year-old me had the opportunity, the unfortunate opportunity, well, and my sisters will probably say it was a fortunate opportunity to save my sisters from a house fire. My parents were teen parents. They were what we call now essential workers. They had to go out and work. So that my sisters, I have 2 younger sisters, and I could eat, so that we could eat, so that we could live. And times for us were not easy. But during this particular night, they had to leave me alone. I had to babysit my 5-year-old, 4-year-old sister, and our apartment caught fire. And not knowing what to do, only doing what I thought was the right thing to do, I ushered them to another room, put a towel at the door, and hopped in the bed and hid under the covers with them, hoping somebody would smell the smoke and come and save us. And they did. We were saved because someone had saw the fire, and we were saved. But it was out of that, I believe, in my heart, and I've said this recently, that what was meant to possibly kill me was something that ignited me for service. And at 7 years old, that is when I began my service journey, my service to not only to my family, but then it led to service for our country, service in the faith community, serving underserved people, and throughout my life as a community advocate, be it criminal justice reform, be it working with communities who needed resources, be it working with youth workforce development organizations, currently now serving as a co-chair of Black Male Initiative Georgia, as I mentioned, part of Fulton County DA's Conviction Integrity Unit. Service is who I am, and service is what I'm about. My only intention on running for this seat is to serve the people of District 38 and ultimately serve the state of Georgia, because I would be a state senator whose decisions would impact the entire state. So as you think about what you want your next state senator to be, I want you to consider me, Michael Carson, as your next state senator, one who is already have a footprint in Cobb County, already have a footprint in Fulton County, is already working with state officials on a number of things, who are already working with community leaders on a number of initiatives, who's not just someone who popped up and said, hey, I want to do this, and no one knows who I am. So I would ask you for your vote, ask you for your support, go to carsonforsenate.com, learn more about what our platform is, learn more about who I am, what I stand for. But you will have a visible and viable leader, someone you can reach out to, someone you will see, someone you will be able to identify and say, this is a person who's working hard, not only during the 40 days, but during the entire year, who's working hard for me and who's working hard for my interests, because I've talked to him, because I know who he is, because I've seen him, because we've had a conversation. So I thank you, Willie, for this opportunity to address your audience and address those who are constituents in District 38.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carson. And I thank those who've been watching. As I mentioned earlier, we will make this video available on Facebook, and it's also on YouTube. And also I will provide a copy of it to you, Mr. Carson, that you may share with your campaign. And just like I've said in the beginning to those who are watching, is that, voter education leads to enhanced voter participation. So just don't go punch a name, know who you're voting for, and just don't vote for somebody because you're used to seeing a name. So have a good evening, stay safe, and I appreciate your time, Mr. Carson, and also Representative Roger Bruce. Have a good evening.
Thank you, appreciate it, Willie.
All right.